Of our hobby design Nissan R33 400R build. So picking up where we left off last time, we're going to apply a panel line wash to our freshly painted body. So the body's been drying for about 12 hours, so more than adequately dry. What we're going to do is add a Tamiya enamel black panel line wash to all the panel lines, just to accentuate them, all the door shuts, bonnet shuts, anywhere that hold a wash, anywhere basically we described earlier on. Now this is an enamel based wash, so it doesn't damage the lacquer at all. We're going to let this dry afterwards for about half an hour, and then using a cotton bud and some kitchen paper moistened with some Winsor & Newton Santador, which is an odorless mineral spirits, we're going to wipe away any excess and leave our nice highlighted panel lines behind. So once your decals are set in place, these are totally safe, no problem at all. I would leave the decals, like I said, about 12 hours to make sure they're thoroughly reset. And like I say, this is important why you need to cut them to make sure that they stay down and don't lift under the wash. So wheels we assembled in the first part. We've got some centre caps to put in place now. So they've been carefully cut off. A little bit of CA glue. They are dropped in place just like that. We'll do all 4 of those, and that is the wheels fully completed then. Big tip here, make sure your wheels are glued together properly. And you don't pull them apart like that. A little bit of CA glue, fix that, no problem. And here we are, we can move on to our first proper session of 2K on this car. So we've got my nicely cleaned out booth, we've got a fresh filter in the extractor, we've got our plastic case to the left to store our modelling, to keep the dust off it. I am double gloved with nitrile gloves. We've got the ProScale Paint 2K system. I've got my full face respirator on. My extractor is running. I have a through draft with my window open just a tad, and I'm in the room on my own. Follow these precautions with 2K and you'll be just fine. Keep it off your skin and out your lungs, and you'll have no problem whatsoever. So 2-to-1 mix R2K. So basically 2 parts clear, 1 part activator. So here I'm probably mixing, I think I tend to do on bigger bodies like this, 10 ml of clear, 5 milliliters of activator. Use pipettes once and once only, and then throw them away. So there's our 5 milliliters of activator with our 10 milliliters of clear. There we go. We can then pop the lid back on that securely, put it out of the way, and then stir this up to get the chemical reaction started. Always keep your 2K nice and cool and out of direct sunlight, and you'll find it'll last a lot longer. The activator is a consumable. It has an isocerylate, which is a ingredient of superglue. So it is a consumable. It does only have a limited shelf life. After that, we add 5% of thinner. So with a 15 milliliter combined mix, we're adding 0.75 milliliters of thinner. And again, we're using a fresh pipette for each one and throwing it away after use. We do not contaminate any of the bottles with each one of the chemicals. And there we go. That is it all mixed together. And now we're going to filter this through a 190 micron paint strainer in case there's any crusty bits of activator in there, which is quite common with all 2Ks off the lid of the bottle. It does dry on the outer edge, and sometimes when you undo the bottle, it can fall into your cup. So always strain your 2K. We sell these strainers over on ProScale as well. And again, one use only, throw it away. So we get everything out of the way. Give the model a wipe over with our Tamiya anti-static brush. Make sure it's securely mounted to our stand as well. And there we go, we're ready for our 2K. Now as you can see, I've wetted the surface of my booth as well on the kitchen paper. That way any dust that lands on there should stay on there and not get airborne again. That's the idea. Anything we can do to reduce dust, because dust is the real enemy with clear coating. So that wiped over, we give it an anti-static brush. Our Revolution CR5 eye water is loaded up with our 2K mix. We're about 22 psi, and we're going to start off the process by applying a nice semi-wet coat to the entire surface of the model. So we don't want to go full wet coat, we want to see a nice semi-gloss surface on this. This is where you'll see your colour starting to come alive, and it darkens it absolutely beautiful. You can already see it just after one light coat of paint. Make sure you're getting all those wheel arches as well, and in and around any grills or lights or bumpers, and get all those angles. What that will do is a nice semi-gloss coat, like I say, all around the model. Just take your time here. So you want to be as thorough as possible and as quick as possible, because the least time you keep it outside of that box, the less dust you've got a chance of landing on the model. So take your time, but hurry up at the same time if that is a thing you can do. Now we're following the previous edge of clear coat, just keeping that wet edge as we go along. And like I say, it's just a nice semi-gloss coat. Again, getting all those wheel arches, all those nooks and crannies, all on the sills as well. And I've sped this up now just for time saving really. And then across the front, in and around all that bumper, in and around all the grills and the intakes and the lights, across that bonnet. You can see me keeping that wet edge all the way along. Don't forget your A-pillars as well, quite easy to forget those. Across the roof, across the boot lid, in the inner outer edge of those spoiler mounts, and along the back end of the car, and in and around the top and the bottom of the bumper. And there you go, in and around those A, B, and C pillars. And there we go. Quick check underneath. And there we go. So we'll plate that back in our box. And then we'll 2K all the rest of the other parts as well. So we've got the 2 mirrors and our upper and lower spoilers that we carboned earlier on. So don't forget, if you're going to clear coat over decals, make sure they've been thoroughly dried for at least 24 hours. Heat is a big helping factor as well. It will get any moisture out from behind them. And most importantly, make sure they are fully sealed and set in place. So we'll let that flash off for 5 minutes and we're back for our second coat. And we're going to apply basically the same coat again, a nice semi-gloss coat, probably a little bit heavier on the trigger this time. And I've come back off the model a little bit to get a bit more of a wider pattern. But we're not going to try and get a perfect 2K on this coat. We're just going to get another nice coat of 2K down, and then we're going to pop it back in our little box for 90 seconds or so and let the self-leveling properties of the 2K take effect. So exactly the same as the first coat, just getting all those nooks and crannies, all around the tops of the bumpers, all around those spoiler supports, and be nice and thorough on the roof as well. And you can see we just got our first speck of dust, absolutely gutting. I think that was literally one of the only specks of dust on this car, and they just come out of nowhere. Literally just an airborne piece of dust, and it gets suckered up by the brush and just blown onto the car. It's a pain. It doesn't go through the airbrush, but it just gets sucked into the paint flow. So pop that back into the booth. It's going to sit in there for about 90 seconds, and we'll give all these another coat as well. What we're going to do then is we're going to thin our final 2K a little bit more. I've been finding this much more beneficial lately, definitely getting a better finish and requiring a lot less sanding and polishing on the end stages. So we'll pour our mix back into a nice fresh medicine cup so we can see the markings clearly on the side to see just how much we have left. So if you're left with 1 milliliter of clear mix, 10 milliliters of clear mix, we're going to add 10% thinner. So we're going to add another 1 milliliters of thinner to that. It doesn't sound a lot, but it makes a huge difference to the viscosity of the 2K, and it flows a lot better and self-levels a lot easier as well. Now, I know a few people have been doing this on the first and second coat. I wouldn't recommend doing it. I've tried all these different ways on numerous models, and for me, this is the optimum way of doing it. So again, back from the model a little bit more. We'll go a bit heavier on the trigger, and we are just trying to lay down a nice wet coat here. And this will self-level a lot faster. You'll also find it flows through the airbrush a lot faster as well. And again, we're just following that wet edge while we do it. There we go, across the roof. Again, pay attention to all the nooks and crannies and the A-pillars. Just having a look. We're going to pop it back in our box and just do all the other little parts again as well. Remember, the smaller parts don't need as much paint, so don't go as mad. There we go. And then we're going to angle the spoilers now straight, so the 2K self-levels as it should. Always find this helpful to do on parts like this. And then we're going to get that body out for one last time. And have a look. Now this should be absolutely like glass. If you can see any imperfections, put a little bit more 2K on it. Won't need a lot more. It'll just need a light spray across a few areas. It should literally look flawlessly perfect. If you see any ripples or any imperfections, put a little bit more 2K down. Don't be afraid to push it. It is very, very forgiving, and you'll be surprised how much 2K you can actually put down. It is very, very forgiving. So using the light in the booth to my advantage, I'm angling it all round, just looking for any orange peel or any slight imperfections. And like I say, don't be afraid of putting more down. How this looks now is how it's going to dry. So the better finish you can get now, the less sanding and polishing you're going to have to do later. So it is a time saver, and it will give you a much better finish. And like I say, other than that one speck of dust on the roof, this is one of the cleanest bodies I've ever sprayed. Very little muck or debris in it, but dust is everywhere. Either you could be the most cleanest person in the world and you'll still have dust. It's all over the place. So one final look around. Yep, happy with that. Back in the box. Also be careful putting it out of the box. It's very easy to snag it on things. Been there and done that. And a quick check of all these little parts as well. And I'm happy how that's looking. So that'll be left in there now for a week to fully cure. Clean your airbrush with your lacquer thinner as per usual. And here we are now with the really boring part. This is the part of modelling I dislike the most, and that is the cleanup of all the other parts. Now, thankfully on the Alpha and the Hobby Design kits, the part count isn't really high, and the parts are really clean. Now, there was a bit of a seam on the back of the seat I had to take care of, but normally the Alpha Model Hobby Design kits are really clean kit and require minimal cleanup, so they are quite fast to get through. In fact, to me, these are a nice welcome break from plastic kits because they're just so easy to build and assemble. Whereas a plastic kit, you've got loads of plastic parts to de-seam and sand. There's very little to do on these bits. But yeah, there was a little bit of rough resin on the back of these seats, so I gave it a quick go over with a UMP sponge sander until it was happy. And then we're going to get everything mounted up. So all the resin's mounted up, all the P's cut off and cleaned up. And we mount this to reverse mounted Tamiya tape in preparation for primer and paint. And as you can see, we've got a multitude of parts. Not everything is going to be painted here. Brake discs on this car are going to be steel, natural metal, so no carbon on this. So that saves us a bit of time. We've got an intercooler grille that's going to be normal colour as well, just metallic colour, so it doesn't need painting either. But basically clean up all the parts of our Zoran shears and our Tamiya diamond file if we need it. And I'll be honest, 9 times out of 10, the Zoran shears get that close to the PE, they don't even need filing, which is why I love them so much for my photo etch. And as you can see, mounted on here, everything is in one place and really easy to paint. So there we go, over in the paint booth, we've got our ProScale Paints photo etch primer now. So this is an etch primer. This will actually chemically etch itself to the metal, gives a much more resilient primer coat. I was spraying this from my CR3 Revolution water at about 18 psi. Just a couple of light coats is more than sufficient on this. We've built up our window wipers as well, which you've seen me do dozens of times now. Nice and simple to do. A couple of coats of etch primer on these, getting all those angles. You'll find a multitude of clips come in very handy for modelling. These are just bulldog clips, absolutely fantastic for holding parts like these. It's quite surprising as modelers what we will repurpose for modelling, and they work absolutely perfect. All the resin is being primed in a multitude of different primers. So this one is Tamiya Grey Surface Primer, decanted out the can, thinned about 10% with Tamiya Lacquer Thinner Retarder, and just a couple of coats down on the chassis to get a nice primer coat. Lays down beautiful. I would use ProScale, but we can't get in there to sand it. I only tend to use ProScale on the actual bodies where I can get in there to sand it. Because it's a microfiller primer, it doesn't really have a use on parts like these. So I still regularly use Tamiya grey and pink and white. And I use black Mr. Surfacer 1500. I wish Tamiya made a black primer, but for some reason they don't. Like I say, a couple of coats of primer and everything. We can get all this ready for our base colour for our interior. Pretty bland interior on this. It's going to be mostly black, grey and anthracite. It's just how these cars are. But it's still quite a nice interior and it builds up really, really well. So there we go. With Tamiya primer, it does like to go on a little bit wetter. So don't be afraid to put your last few coats down a little bit wetter than the first. Be careful with your first coats. They just need nice mist coats or it will kind of pool and separate. There we go. Lots of parts to paint, lots of parts to prime. So yeah, I enjoy painting though. It is probably my most enjoyable part of modelling, whether it be the body or just parts like these. I always enjoy painting. But there we go. There's the door cards done. You can see the Tamiya primer does cover really well. Decanted, it sprays beautiful through the airbrush, thinned a little bit. And then on our wipers, we're going to go Mr. Surfacer 1500 black. Just give them a nice black base coat of primer. Multitude of angles on these, so make sure you get them all covered. There we go. And then some other parts need painting up as well. So we're going to prime all these running gear parts, like the intercooler, in Mr. Surfacer 1500 black. So yeah, a couple of hours in this paint booth here, priming everything. As I said before in the first episode, priming, very important part of modelling. I tend to prime everything, and I think it's a very important step in not only, spotting imperfections, but also a paint adhesion, giving it a nice and smooth finish. I think it's a very important step to do. And there we go. A final coat of primer on the underside of the chassis. I've no idea why I primed it in grey. I can't remember why I did it. I don't know what the reasoning for that was. I think I wanted to prime the inside grey for the grey paint later on. So I think I kind of thought I'll do underneath as well. It's a nice primer coat ready for the Mr. Surfacer. In the exhaust, we've got some Pro Scale titanium silver. And as you can see by our paints, they cover so fast. Very highly pigmented, very finely pigmented as well. And just an absolutely beautiful colour. Looks absolutely fantastic. So there we go, nice and quick, nice and easy. Me getting some Facebook messages. Apologies there, guys. So we're painting intercooler here. Now, I have painted this wrong. It's going to be black. We are going to repaint it later on, but we'll save that delay for me to realise later. And the brake disc, we're just going to paint the centres in, I think it was just super fine silver, I remember right. And obviously we've got the photo etch to go on these as well. And then we've got some LP5 semi-gloss black from Tamiya for all our lights. And a few other parts as well. And again, the window wipers, some LP5 for those as well. Could be left Mr. Surfacer 1500 black. It is actually a good shade of black. It's like a slightly more satin semi-gloss black, if that makes sense. But I opted for LP5. Now, the interior, we're going to do a mixture of Pro Scale black grey, and I think it was anthracite I did it in. So, light coats of paint, just build it nice and slow. We are going to flock this as well. Flock, yeah, we are. With some anthracite flocking. But just build this up nice and slow to get nice coverage. You can see the colour, a really nice grey black leather colour. And the same on these parts as well. So, Japanese interiors for me are often, they're not the most interesting. This one's not too bad. Thankfully, we've got a couple of shades of interior colour. And